At 12:29 a.m. on January 19, 2005, after nearly 2 decades on death row, Donald Jay Beardslee was pronounced dead at San Quentin State Prison by lethal injection. He was the first death row inmate to be executed in California under Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, a man who was given a chance to start over, but chose the path of crime again. We will delve into his criminal past, explore his choice for a last meal, and his final words before his life came to an end. Due to the serious nature of the case with violent details, viewer discretion is advised. All descriptions are based on case files, testimonies, and verified sources presented with care to respect the victims. The story takes us to Redwood City, California, April 5, 1981. Police received a call. At a remote location, they discovered the body of a young woman. The victim was identified as 19-year-old Patty Gedling. The scene indicated a violent struggle, and the cause of death was a gunshot wound. But what caught the investigators' attention was not just the brutality of the crime. Near Patty's body, they found a small piece of paper with a phone number written on it. This was the first crucial clue, a fragile thread connecting them to the killer. Without hesitation, the police called the number. On the other end of the line, a man answered. When questioned, the man not only did not deny his guilt, but calmly confessed. He was Donald Jay Beardslee. But the shock didn't stop there. Beardslee revealed another horrifying piece of information. He said there was another victim. He directed the police to the location of a second body, the body of 23-year-old Stacy Benjamin, hidden in another location. Stacy's neck had a deep cut. In a single morning, the Redwood City police were faced with a double homicide. The killer had confessed over the phone, but the biggest question was, why? What had happened in the apartment where the tragedy began? Before delving into the mind of the killer, we must remember the lives that were taken. Patty Gedling was only 19, and Stacy Benjamin was 23. 2 young women with their entire futures ahead of them. Details about their personal lives are scarce in the case files, but that only makes the tragedy more heartbreaking. They were not statistics. They were people with families, friends, dreams, and plans. They were lured to an apartment by someone they trusted, Ricky Soria Beardslee's roommate, only to fall into a deadly trap. They endured horrifying final hours being bound, tortured, and brutally murdered. All over a small drug debt that wasn't even theirs, but a friend's. And we cannot forget Laura Griffin, Beardslee's first victim in 1969 in Missouri. Like Patty and Stacy, she had just met her killer at a bar. After a pleasant evening of dancing, she agreed to let Beardslee drive her home, unaware that it would be the last decision of her life. Their deaths are a painful reminder of the injustice and cruelty that can hide in the most unexpected places. Donald Jay Beardslee was born on May 13, 1943 in St. Louis, Missouri, the eldest child in his family. Tragedy struck his life early when his father died when he was just 11. At 15, Beardslee was sent to the Western Military Academy, a highly disciplined environment. At 19, he joined the United States Air Force, serving as a mechanic for 4 years. But his military career was not smooth. In 1965, Beardslee and another airman were caught trying to steal a car. He was sentenced to labor on a farm in Minnesota. It was here that a fateful event occurred. A falling tree struck Beardslee, causing a skull fracture and putting him in a coma for days. This severe head injury would later become a key argument for the defense in his trials. His family reported that after the accident, he had difficulty expressing emotions. Prison records even noted a diagnosis of schizophrenia. In 1969, the first tragedy occurred. In Missouri, after meeting Laura Griffin at a bar, Beardslee went home with her. There, he strangled, stabbed, and drowned her. He confessed immediately afterward but offered no explanation or motive for his actions. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, was sentenced to 19 years, but served only 7 and was paroled in 1977. Upon his release, Beardslee moved to California and even attended San Mateo College. It seemed he had a chance to start over. But just 4 years later, the demon inside him reawakened. On April 5, 1981, at the apartment in Redwood City. The incident stemmed from a failed drug deal. A friend of Beardslee's roommate owed Frank Rutherford, a drug dealer, $180. Frank Rutherford, believed to be the mastermind, devised a cruel plan for revenge. He used the people living in that apartment as his instruments. Ricarda Sue Soria, also known as Ricky Beardslee's roommate, was tasked with luring 2 women, Patty Gedling and Stacy Benjamin, to the apartment. Both girls were completely unrelated to the debt. Prosecutors later highlighted a chilling detail before the victims arrived. Beardslee had sent Soria out to buy duct tape. He was already preparing to bind the victims. As soon as Patty and Stacy walked through the door, they were immediately subdued. According to court testimony, Beardslee and another man named Bill Forrester acted together. Beardslee and Forrester shot Patty Gedling, ending her life. Then, to eliminate the remaining witness, Beardslee acted alone against Stacy Benjamin. He used a knife to inflict a deep cut on her neck, ending the life of the second victim. A cold-blooded, calculated act, all for $185. The investigation and arrest proceeded with surprising speed, largely due to Beardslee's own confession. The only clue at Patty Gedling's crime scene was Beardslee's phone number. When the police called, he did not prevaricate. He admitted to being there, to participating in the murder. This unexpected cooperation culminated when Beardslee calmly showed the police where Stacy Benjamin's body was hidden. Without this confession, it might have taken a very long time to find her. Beardslee was arrested immediately. Police also quickly identified the other accomplices: Frank Rutherford, the mastermind, Ricky Soria, the lure, and Bill Forrester, the man accused of firing the gun with Beardslee. While checking his record, investigators were stunned to discover a crucial fact: Beardslee was still on parole for the 1969 murder of Laura Griffin. This immediately made him eligible for the death penalty, due to the special circumstance of a prior murder conviction. The trial of Beardslee and his co-defendants captured public attention. The prosecution painted a clear picture: this was a carefully planned murder for money. They presented Ricky Soria's testimony as key evidence. Soria had agreed to cooperate, pleading guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for testifying against Rutherford and Beardslee. Her testimony exposed each person's role in the plan. The prosecutor emphasized Beardslee's history of murder as an aggravating circumstance, showing he was a permanent danger to society. Beardslee's defense team attempted to make 2 main arguments. First, his original lawyer had withdrawn, affecting the defense process. Second, and more importantly, they argued that Beardslee was mentally impaired due to his old head injury. They contended that the injury had altered his personality and his ability to control his behavior. However, prosecutors countered this by pointing out that Beardslee had an above-average IQ, indicating he was fully aware of his actions. In the end, the jury delivered its verdicts. Frank Rutherford, the mastermind, was sentenced to life in prison without parole and died in prison in 2003. Ricky Soria was sentenced to 15 years to life. She was paroled in 2015. Bill Forrester was surprisingly acquitted, and Donald J. Beardslee was found guilty of first-degree murder for both victims. With the aggravating circumstance of a prior murder conviction, he was sentenced to death. Justice had been served, but Beardslee's path to the execution chamber would still be many years long. For nearly 20 years, Beardslee lived on death row at San Quentin while his lawyers relentlessly filed appeals. The appeals all focused on the arguments of his brain injury and inadequate legal defense. However, all were denied. The execution date was set for January 19, 2005. Beardslee's final hours were spent in silence. The governor of California at the time, Arnold Schwarzenegger, denied his plea for clemency. In his statement, the governor made it clear, "We are not dealing with a man so damaged that he cannot distinguish between right and wrong." Beardslee's last meal consisted of clam chowder and French bread. When he was brought into the execution chamber, Beardslee showed no resistance. He lay down on the lethal injection gurney quietly. When asked if he had any last words, he declined. Donald J. Beardslee had no final statement. At 12:29 a.m., Donald J. Beardslee was pronounced dead, closing the chapter on the life of a murderer. The victims' families were present at the execution, witnessing the end of the man who had caused them indelible pain. Donald Beardslee paid the price for his crimes. But the stories of those involved continued. The mastermind, Frank Rutherford, died in solitude behind bars. The lure, Ricky Soria, was freed after many years and lives a secluded life. The case of Donald J. Beardslee leaves many questions. Did the brain injury truly affect his behavior, or was it just an excuse for an inherently cruel nature? He was given a second chance after the first murder, but why did he throw it away? Perhaps we will never have satisfactory answers. But one thing is certain. 3 women, Laura Griffin, Patty Gedling, and Stacy Benjamin, are gone forever. Their story is a painful warning about misplaced trust and the price of violence. Justice for the victims may have been served from a legal standpoint, but the pain of their families will endure. And our duty is to never forget their names, to never let the crimes of men like Beardslee fade into the annals of time.